Why, hello, and thank you for joining me today. I am going to be sharing with you in this free live class 10 ways to make 2018 your best year. Now, my name is Dominique D. Wilson, the founder of everythingshetouches.com, and I help inspired women to love themselves fiercely, overcome fear, and step into their power as creators so that they can create the life that they want to live. So today I want to jump right into the tips, but before I do, if you're watching this live, I'd love if you would just drop in the comments really quickly. How did you hear about this broadcast? Did you just find me on Facebook? And also let me know where you're listening from. And so yeah, I am actually here in Frisco, Texas, and so I'd love to see just where everybody's coming from. And if you catch this on the replay, definitely let me know where you're listening from. So I'm going to jump right into the 10 tips. Again, as I said, this is going to be 10 ways to make 2018 your best year. So if you see me kind of looking over, I have some notes here to make sure that I stay on track. So the very first tip is, drum roll, 10, whoops, sorry, I knocked my tea over. Okay. The very first tip is to stop caring what people think. And I know that may sound very basic, but it is huge because so many times we allow what other people think, say, do, might think of us to get in the way of expressing ourselves, whether it be through our work or through a business we want to launch, a book you want to write. And so getting over this idea of what people think is going to be the best way to make sure that whatever intentions you set for yourself, whatever goals you set for yourself, you'll be able to power through those. And so one of the ways that I've found to be most effective is to just be mindful if you are comparing yourself, right? You don't want to compare yourself to what someone else is doing, because at the end of the day, even though you may have a similar idea, we all know there's nothing new under the sun, but no one's going to do what you do the way you do it. So it doesn't matter if you are creating a product, a program, or service. Your unique voice and your authenticity is what sets you apart from everybody else on this planet. And so it's so important to keep that in mind, that you are truly one of a kind. And so when you compare yourself to other people, that's when we start getting into self-judgment and should I be doing this, or does this look right? Does this sound right? And that kind of thing will lead to procrastination. Maybe if you already got started on your goals, you can get off track because you start kind of questioning yourself. Is this really good enough? That imposter syndrome kind of sets in a bit. So really, 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 I want to drive home the first and major way to make 2018 your best year ever is to stop caring what people think. So my next tip here is to be proactive. Now, being proactive, I love this one because this actually was mentioned in Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It was actually his first habit, because being proactive is the attitude of self-responsibility. At the end of the day, you are the leader of your life, and the more that you embrace and embody that, the better results that you'll get no matter what you do, because you realize that this is a co-creative journey. You set your own path, and you can change direction as needed, as you see fit. And you don't have to apologize to anybody. You don't have to explain yourself to anybody, because this is your life. And so when you are proactive, you don't wait for other people to give you permission to step into whatever you want to do to create your dreams. You may need to get some more education, of course. You may need to have a certification in something, but there is so much under the sun. And at the end of the day, it's about giving yourself permission to take one step, just one small step forward towards your purpose every single day, no matter what that is, and keep moving. When you are proactive, you see problems as possibilities and obstacles become opportunities. Instead of saying, well, am I going to be able to do this? I'm not sure if I'll be able to do this thing or if I'm good enough for that. It's, I'm going to look for how I can make this thing happen. No goal is too unrealistic. No dream is too big. So that's number 2. Be proactive. Be the leader of your own life, the captain of your own ship. So the third tip to make 2018 your best year yet is to establish a morning routine. This one for me was a huge game changer because the way you start your day has a huge impact on your energy, the way you make decisions. Everything that you do is kind of like this snowball effect. And so, Bryant, thanks so much for your comment. That's actually my hubby, Bryant Wilson, everybody. So everything that you do throughout your day starts with your mindset when you first wake up. It doesn't really matter what's going on in your life. The way you start your day can either help you to keep your energy high and get you through the day, or it can put you in a bit of a slump, making things a little bit more difficult for you. So one of the things I like to do is take the first hour of every day for myself. That is my self-care time. So during this time, you might go on a nature walk, you can meditate, do exercise or yoga, breath work, whatever it is that you do to pour back into yourself. That's the first hour. I also recommend doing at least 5 to 10 minutes of meditation, because the more you can kind of sit in stillness and just quiet your thoughts, it will help you to be able to create space between things that happen in your emotional reaction or response to it. So meditation for me is just huge. It's a huge piece in mindset. So a minimum of 5 to 10 minutes a day is all you really need. And there's some great tools out there. You can sit in silence. There's Insight Timer, which is a great app. You can find that in the Apple in the Apple App Store, or you can also find that in Google Play. Meditation Oasis podcast. You can actually just type in meditationoasis.com and you'll find the podcast there. They have a ton of free meditations. You can just download them right there on your phone. So all those are actually really helpful, and they range in time. So if you're kind of in a hurry, they have shorter ones, or if you want something longer, they have that as well. And so we talked about your morning routine, your first hour for yourself, your meditation. Journaling is another one. So I like to meditate first, and afterwards I like to do a bit of journaling. And in my journaling, I like to write down what is my highest intention for that day. So I'm thinking about how is it that I want to feel throughout the day and also at the end of the day. And by doing this, it kind of puts me in a frame of mind to where I look at the world differently based on what my intention is. And so it's so powerful to just kind of think about what it is that you want to feel throughout the day and set your intention based on that. It can be your intention is to make aligned choices that support your health, or align choices that support your goals. You might have an intention to declutter. You might have an intention to connect with other people. It can be anything that you want it to be, but just as long as you kind of have something so that you have some foundation to fall back on throughout the day. After you set your intention, you've done your meditation, the next thing I like to do is write down 5 to 10 things that I'm grateful for, no matter how big or how small. This is huge, because when you focus on what you're grateful for, what you're doing is placing your intention and your energy into what's good in your life and what's going right. And I'm a big believer that what you focus on increases. So the more you focus on what's good in your life and what's going awesome for you, the more awesomeness and good that you'll get, because that's where you're pouring your energy into. And even if there's always something to be grateful for, but even if you find yourself kind of repeating the same things, that's perfectly okay, because honestly, every day I am grateful just to be alive, because that is huge. Nothing else matters if I'm not here. So that's one of the things that I write down every day. So you can make this as long or as short as you like. So we've talked about, let me go back here. My first tip was to stop caring what other people think. Then we talked about being proactive, which is being the leader of your own life. We talked about establishing a morning routine and some things that you can weave into that. Oh, and before I move on to the next tip, this is very important. So I'm a very highly driven person, and I like to have 5 million things that I do every day. And so this last step for my morning routine is very important so that I can stay focused and keep it within reason. And that is to make a daily to-do list. Now, your daily to-do list is really a very boiled down version of what your overall goals are. And we'll talk about goals in just a minute. But you want to think about 2 to 3 things, 3 things tops that are the major things, the most important things that are the highest priority that you want to knock out. And those are the things that go on your to-do list. And anything else after you finish those 3 things, you can kind of knock those out one by one. But if you put 10 things on your to-do list, and let's say you only get to 2 of them, it starts to chip away at your confidence a little bit. So it's very important to just kind of make sure that you're intentional about what's on your to-do list, and that just knock those 3 big things out first. There's a book called Eat the Frog that talks about this. Don't remember the author, but definitely go check that out. So that's your morning routine. The 4th tip for making 2018 your best year yet is to declutter your space, your time, and your energy. So we'll start with space. By decluttering your space, the first thing you need to do is look around and see what's actually filling your space. Are there boxes and drawers with miscellaneous items and random things that people have given you that you don't really care for, but they're just kind of sitting there? Maybe clothes that you've grown out of or that you just don't really like anymore. So just kind of look at what's in your space, because it's been shown in many studies that kind of your outer world is a reflection of what's going on inside. So if your house, if your office, if your car, your purse is filled with just clutter and receipts and paper and stuff everywhere, then chances are you're probably not as organized in your thoughts. And maybe you might see that show up as a lack of clarity. It could come up as writer's block, or just not having that energy to power through certain things that you want to do. And so your physical space has a huge impact on you. So I encourage you to just kind of go through whatever you consider to be your space, and just clear out what you don't need anymore. And if you're unsure of whether to get rid of something or not, because we've all done that thing, I'm sure, where you'll toss something out and then 3 days later you're like, oh man, I needed that thing. So they call it the 6-month test. You put it in a box and write down the date on the outside of the box, 6 months from the day. And if you haven't even opened the box or used that item by that date, you should probably get rid of it, because it's not of value to you. And I'm not talking about, family heirlooms and things that you're supposed to keep long term, but I'm sure you get the idea here. So declutter your space. The next one is to declutter your time. And before I get into this, let's look at what's currently going on with your time. Most of us don't keep a log of what we do from sunup to sundown, but you might want to try that just for a day or so, and see how is it that you're currently spending your time. How much time are you spending on social media, phone calls from people that you don't even want to talk to necessarily? And so your time is huge. It's important. It's the thing that we all want more of, because there just never seems to be enough of it. And I found that when you are intentional about how you spend your time, you actually do have a lot more time than you think. And so it's important to make sure that you're spending that on the things that are moving you forward in your purpose towards your goals, because your time, that's your life force. So what is really worth your time? This for me looked like, cutting down phone calls from people about just random jargon to maybe 3 minutes. Hey, I got about 3 minutes to talk to you. What's up? And then when that 3 minutes up, you politely get off the phone. Also another way is to create a daily schedule for yourself. Now, I've had a lot of trial and error with daily schedules. Sometimes you create a schedule and it's so tight and rigid that there's no wiggle room. So one way that I've found to work around that, if you create a schedule that is too specific, there's just not enough space if an anomaly comes up, and it can throw you off, and then 3 days into it, you'll just toss the whole schedule out and go back to where you started. So for your schedule, what I would say is create a block schedule. So say from, this time, 9 to 5, just call that work rather than writing down each hour what you're doing. And then from 5 to 5:30, write down whatever else. But you can block your schedule into like 3 or 4 chunks for the whole day. So work, self-care, whatever your schedule is, leisure, romance, whatever your activities are, try and block them rather than creating an hour by hour schedule. And that might be a more effective way to organize your day, and make sure that you stay consistent with what your schedule is. So we've talked about, repurposing your time by cutting out things that aren't really priorities to you, creating a daily schedule. And so the next one is to declutter your energy. Now, this is something that it's a little bit more subtle, because thinking about how you spend your energy is more about what's going on internally. So your energy is, what are you thinking about most of the time? If someone does something to piss you off, are you sitting there just steaming over it, for an hour? Or is it, 90 seconds is gone and you move on to the next thing? So you really want to think about how are you spending your energy, because that can take a toll on you. Even though you're continuing your daily activities and continuing your work, what's going on in your mind can slow you down. It can make you get distracted. It can discourage you from things you're working on. So you really want to be intentional about that. A couple things to keep in mind are, what are you putting in through your five senses? So what are you watching? What are you listening to? What are you smelling? What are you tasting? And what are you touching in your environment? All of these things are information that are coming into you, and they are going to affect your energy one way or another. So they're either uplifting you or dragging you down. And so just a couple things to keep in mind. Also, things that drain your energy, right? Gossip, negative, I don't want to say negative people, but people who tend to focus on more negative subjects. We all know people like that, people who complain a lot or always have something negative to say about someone else. Those things, even though you may not even comment on them, just listening to it automatically makes you feel like, so it's important to make sure that things aren't draining your energy. And if there are people in your circle like that, you might want to create some space between them. Again, limit those phone calls. If you have that friend that calls you complaining about the same thing over and over again, just tell them, hey, I only have about 2 minutes to talk. What's up? And after the 2 minutes, hang up. Or you don't have to have that conversation at all. That's up to you to just kind of look at that and see what value are you getting out of that relationship, because it may be one that it's time to let go of. So another one is bad news. I don't even watch the news anymore, because every time you turn it on, it's just bad news after bad news after bad news. And so all of that is feeding into your energy. It affects how you feel about yourself, the world around you, and all of this stuff is kind of happening on a subconscious level. So the more intentional you can be about that, the more control you'll have over how you're showing up in the world and how you feel. So that was the fourth way to make sure that 2018 is your best year. So the fifth tip is get clear on what you want. It's so important to know what you want, and it really surprises me that so many of us don't know what we want. And it's because we're busy. We're bombarded with advertisements and people and things telling us what we should be and how we should show up and what we should want, that sometimes maybe it's been a while since you actually sat down and thought about, what do you want? What do you want to experience in your lifestyle, in your relationships, in your career, in your finances, your health, your friendships, your community, all of these different areas of your life? How specifically do you know what you want? So that might be an area where you want to kind of get your journal out and look at all those different areas of your life and think, in the perfect scenario, the ideal scenario, in, let's say, my relationships, what does that actually look like? And just write it down, kind of write down what your ideal relationship, what your ideal career, your ideal finances, your ideal state of health. And the more you get clear on what you want, the better you'll be able to make decisions in your day-to-day life to see, okay, is this thing actually moving me towards what I want, or is it taking me off path? And the more you do this and you know this, you'll have more confidence, so that you don't have to explain yourself or justify or feel like you're hurting somebody's feelings for not doing something, for standing in your power of no, because you know what you want, you know why you want it, and you have that vision of your ideal life in your mind to kind of remind you that, yes, this is okay for you to step into your power, know what you want, and go after it. So the next tip is to set quarterly SMART goals. I'm sure all of us know what SMART goals are, but I'll give you a quick refresher. SMART is, the S is for specific, the M is for measurable, the A is for action oriented, the R is for relevant, and the T is for time-based. Now, the reason I say quarterly is because sometimes when you set goals over a very long span of time, say a year, there's not enough time for you to, it makes it a little more difficult to go in and reassess and see, is this goal actually working for me, or maybe should I adjust it or set a completely different goal? So if you set your goals for every 3 months, it's a shorter period of time for you to be more specific, and then for you to make necessary adjustments. You can assess your progress a lot easier rather than trying to look at the entire year. Now, one way that I found to set SMART goals that has been very effective for me is to start by thinking about how you want to feel. So this kind of goes back to earlier when I talked about setting an intention. I think that if you try to just set goals based on being excellent or what you think is going to get you further, sometimes they can fall out of alignment with who you are. At the end of the day, aside from all our ambitions and, the things that we do out in the world, our careers, we are people with feelings. And it's important that what you do makes you feel good. If you don't feel good about your life, if it doesn't feel good to you, then what's the value in it? So by thinking, say, if I look at the first quarter and say, okay, that ends at the end of March, how do I want to feel by that time? How do I want to feel in my finances? How do I want to feel in my relationships? How do I want to feel physically, my health? How do I want to feel when it comes to my ambitions, my career? How do I want to feel about my education? So if you start by thinking about how you want to feel, then you know what you need to do to cultivate that feeling. And then that's how I like to set my SMART goals. Then you go into the criteria, making sure that it's specific. Instead of just saying, I want to be healthy, right? You would say something like, I want to do 1 hour of hatha yoga every morning, or something, very specific, so that you can actually know exactly what you'll be doing every day. So that's my snippet on SMART goals. The 7th tip for making 2018 your best year is to invest in your growth. Now, it's so important to continue learning and growing, and sometimes you reach the crux of what you know. You reach the end of what you can teach yourself and what you can find online, maybe even for free. And at that point, if you don't challenge yourself to move a little bit higher, maybe you need to hire a mentor or a coach or take another class. Maybe it's time for you to brush up on some skills. If you don't do that, then you kind of end up plateauing. And when you're moving in your career, you're in your passion, you're doing your thing, and you start to plateau, that starts chipping away at your confidence, and you'll be less engaged. So this whole life class is about helping you to start this year strong and to keep going, so that you don't fall off the wagon, which it happens, whatever, and beat yourself up for it. So it's so important that you invest in your growth. Look at your life and see, are you really an expert in this area, or is it time for you? Have you gotten a bit rusty here? I also want to speak to this idea of imposter syndrome, because so many people have this fear of showing up fully in their power, because it's a bit of a mindset block. And so the more you invest in your growth, the more comfortable you'll be in giving your gifts to the world. The more you invest in your own education and in your own elevation, the more comfortable you'll be charging for your services, based on value rather than looking at what other people are charging and trying to justify. So this really affects so many different levels of life. So investing in your growth by hiring help or whatever it is you need to do, even if it's just reading another book. This is so important to continue learning, continue growing, and always challenge yourself. Don't ever feel like you've become a know-it-all and like you've made it, because that's when things start going downhill. So the next tip, number 8, for how to make sure that 2018 is your best year, is to surround yourself with optimistic people. This one is huge, and I think it's highly underrated. because there's something about being around people that see your greatness, even if it's like their worst day ever. But when they look at you, they see you in your full potential. That is so empowering. And this sends you energy to keep you going. These are people who will hold you accountable to your goals. But before we even get to holding you accountable, they will know that your goals are possible for you. It's so frustrating to share your vision with somebody and have them say, oh, can you really do that? Or you've got too many irons in the fire. You're thinking too big. You know, you should never have to hear that when you set a goal. And so it's so important to not just yes man, but people who really believe that you've got what it takes and that will be like, okay, sure. So how are you going to do that? All right, let's talk about it and move you forward. You can find these people in your spiritual center. You can find them you can go to meetup.com. There's all kinds of meetups all over the place for different things, whether it be a business meetup, they have natural hair meetups, they have meetups for spirituality, they have meetups for sports, for everything. So meetups are a really great way to do that. I myself am a Toastmaster. So Toastmasters is international. It's all over the world. And wow, it's a very highly energized bunch of people who just love to support one another in growing and expanding their communication and leadership skills. So that's an option. You can also find these people in mastermind groups, at conferences, local networking and business events. So just think about, where do you think you would find people who are motivated, highly ambitious, and positive? And try to be around those people as much as possible. And you will notice your energy shift and you'll have that momentum to keep going no matter what. The next tip, number 9, is to extend patience and compassion towards yourself. And I totally think this is worth saying, because a lot of times, especially when you are very highly driven and motivated, it's so easy to beat yourself up if you don't achieve a goal the way you want it to and in the time frame you want it to. And so just be patient. You know, think about a child learning to walk and how much patience you would extend to them every time they fall down, you know, knowing that they're doing their best and they're trying to keep going. And of course you want them to feel motivated and you want them to know they can do it because you believe in them. So you have to extend that same thing towards yourself, because even though we're adults, we still have the same feelings. And so we can be harder on ourselves than anybody else, and it's completely unnecessary. So have patience and have compassion, and this will help you to keep your confidence high. This will help you to be in a state of acceptance of yourself, so that you do have that motivation to keep going no matter what, knowing that if everyone else in the world turned their backs on you, you have to be that one person that's always like, yes, you got this. Love yourself fiercely. So the 10th and final tip to make 2018 your best year yet is to be persistent and consistent. A very wise man that I know once said, consistence will get you the result, and persistence will keep it. So the more you just keep putting yourself out there over and over again, no matter what, if no one, maybe you're blogging or creating social media posts and no one's reading your blog yet, well, just keep doing it. Stay at it. If you are working out and you give up after 5 days, of course you haven't given yourself enough time to see a result. So to just keep at it, whatever it is you feel most inspired to do, whatever your heart is desiring to do, just stay with it. Be consistent, meaning, you know, if you do something every Monday at 8 o'clock, then make sure it's every Monday at 8 o'clock. Just keep a very consistent schedule on that, and be persistent, meaning that you don't give up no matter what comes up. If you get thrown off and something happens Monday you can't go, then do it Tuesday. Don't make excuses for why you can't. If you fall off the wagon, that's all right. You know, going back to number 9, have compassion, have patience, get right back on as if nothing happened, and keep moving forward. Because at the end of the day, this is your life. This is your journey. You have a purpose that is bigger than you. And all of us are learning and growing and expanding every single day. We don't have it all figured out, but the more you keep one foot in front of the other and keep putting yourself out there, the more awesome results you will see. So those are my 10 tips to help you make 2018 your best year yet, I'm going to tell you about a free guide that I put together. This is a 3-page PDF download, and it's called Express Yourself, 6 Ways to Overcome Imposter Syndrome. I'm actually going to drop this in the comments. Feel free to go and download that. I will definitely put a link here for you. And the reason I created this is because so many of us brilliant, inspired women dim our light because of fear, this fear of putting ourselves out there. What are people going to think? You know, what will they say about me? Who am I to help someone when I don't have it all figured out? And you know, we're human. These are natural thoughts that happen, but the more you continue to take inspired action on your goals, despite that, you'll be able to push past it. So this guide I put together are my best practices for working through that, because I want to see you succeed and give your gifts to the world, because that's what we're all here for. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Let me just type this link in here. And there we go. So there's the link to the free download. Definitely grab your copy of that and have a beautiful day and a very successful and happy year. Bye.